Welcome to Birth Story Medicine's YouTube video series on Innana's descent. I'm Danit Tsur Almog. I'm a birth story mentor and one of the tutors of Birth Story Medicine. And today I'm here with Pam England, founder of Birth Story Medicine and author of several books, including Ancient Map for Modern Birth. So this video, third in our series, is about the call to return and the ascent through the gates. In the previous video, we left Innana in the underworld, restored after being fed the food of life and the water of life. So what happens next, Pam?
Well, Innana has taken up some of the Maida of the underworld and is sitting on the throne of the Kur when she first hears the beat of the drum and her name being called from the great above. Minjabur and all who love her in Sumer, the upper world, are calling for her return. Innana is torn about rushing back to her former life. I need to rest. Alone, I'm not ready. Calls keep coming to the great above.
There are two calls in every heroic journey. The first call to leave home and undergo transformation, but there's a second call to complete our journey by returning to the great above. If you don't know about the second call to return, you might not tune into it. You might think the journey ends when the ordeal is over, when the baby is born. And many people who don't have this ascent inner map do.
And that's one way of understanding why so many people feel incomplete in postpartum. But there's also another phase called the refusal of the call. Even when the hero hears the call to return, they may at first hesitate to return because they're in doubt that they're ready, that they're strong enough, know enough, or maybe they're just getting too comfortable in the underworld.
You would think anyone would want to get out of the underworld after the ordeal as quickly as possible.
You would think so. But some heroes eat the food or drink the water of the underworld, not the food and water of life brought by the allies. Once they take up the Maida of the underworld, the power of the underworld, it's very hard to return.
So the call and the refusal, they represent being of two minds, incongruent, when one part of you wants to move forward, but another part is getting comfortable with the first story about what happened or with the blaming being right or whatever it is.
This probably happened to the warrior queen Innana, who loved power and attention. I bet she eyed taking Ereshkigal's throne for herself. After all, she took Enki's boat of heaven. And that's another story within this great myth. Maybe we'll tell you another time. But you want to think of the throne as a symbol. And symbols can be ambiguous, which means there are many possible meanings.
And that's the beauty of it.
Oh. Well, one meaning of the throne in mythology is seat of power.
I think we occupy that seat when we hold on to anger, for example, because we want to feel I am right. And like we hold on to the truth.
Yeah, I've taken that seat myself.
Well, so have I. Taking that seat can also be holding on to suffering to the point that it becomes part of your identity. Like you are the one who suffers.
Mm-hmm. In the throne, you want to feel redeemed by dreaming your powerlessness about what happened as power through blaming others or the system.
Or sometimes even blaming God. It's the power of the victim.
Yeah. Well, in mythology, the throne can also represent the lap of the goddess. When a king takes the throne, he is sitting on the lap of the goddess. Consider, at what point in your life have you wanted to sit on the throne of the underworld?
So what might happen to someone when they claim the symbolic throne of the underworld?
Well, many people do after an ordeal, encountering the unwished for, and they sit on that throne for the rest of their lives. In mythic language, we could say, they got a taste for the food of the underworld, a taste for eating clay and drinking unworthy, dirty water. If this happens, their return journey will pause for a while. And if they don't answer the call to return, they can remain incomplete. But you know, the hero wants to finish this rite of passage. The heroic journey in childbirth as a rite of passage is not meant to end in eternal suffering and confusion, but for too many, it does. It's not always clear in life exactly when you hear and answer the call to return, but that's okay because the call will keep coming.
Innana's return is a map for all of us today. There's a time to cocoon, to recover, to rest, but we don't want to go from the transformation of birth back to daily routine and work without participating in an internal journey home.
Eventually, a time will come for you to leave the throne and take the stairs.
In the great myth, Innana must ascend through the gates, encountering Bidu, the gatekeeper. But for you, this ascent will happen within you. No one else may notice because it is happening while you're going about daily activities of living and parenting, shopping, cooking. So Innana, when she's strong enough to start the ascent, to start going up the stairs, she has to go through the first gate. Everybody comes to her and says, "How are you? How was it?" And she doesn't even know what to answer. And she gets a little bit more of the food of life and water of life, and also a really nice, loving advice that this is the gate of no words. And you need no words to go through it. You could just wait for the story to form and go through this gate as you are. It's such a relief for Innana, and she does go through this gate without any words or without many words. And she starts going up the stairs and going through gate after gate on her way up. She can hear the echo of the question that Bidu, the gatekeeper, asked her on her way down. And this time he's asking, "Who are you now? Who are you now?" After going through all that, who are you now? And some gates she can take back what was taken away from her on the way down. She might be really happy to take back the necklace of lapis and put it back on her neck and feel the connection to her mom and her grandmother and all the women in her family that gave birth. But in some gates on her way up, she realizes things must stay in the underworld. Some things just belong in the underworld. And some things are just not right for her anymore now, to who she is right now. So she goes through the gates, taking back some of her Meda and leaving behind some of it.
At each gate, you, like Innana, will encounter Bidu, the gatekeeper, or maybe you know him as Nettie, depending on which version you've read. At each gate, Bidu will ask you, or is asking you now during your ascent, which story are you telling yourself now? And tell him that version of your story. What comes up for you when he asks, "Who are you now?" Or which hidden part of your experience can you cherish?
One of the challenges of the modern return is that the medical story or the outcome story is the dominant story in our birth culture. So many storytellers develop their story around the medical assessment and management, and this may become confused with their personal story and become the story they tell or write, maybe forever, maybe even to their child.
One of the tasks of your return may be to understand the medical version of what happened. But don't stop there. There are more layers and story gates. Like Innana, you will have to pass through the sixth gate, which is positioned between the unconscious and conscious stories we tell ourselves. It's at this gate where Innana and we hear the seven Annuna, the seven judges, who question the hero. The hero feels the piercing pain of self-inflicted judgments, as well as judgments from others. Trying to defend and explain ourselves fixates our attention and can arrest our ascent for a long time, even a lifetime.
All these judgments, self-judgments, and feeling judged by others, they actually have a positive intention for us. By finding who it is to be blamed, we create an explanation. We imagined a very simplified black and white cause and effect that gives us a false sense of control. But it has a high price.
Yes, these judgments and assumptions are not true. But when we believe they are, we can spin in the revolving door, the sixth gate, for a long time. In the spin, we want to believe we are a blameless, powerless victim of uncontrollable circumstances. So we defend our decisions and blame the actions or words of others. And in the next breath, we drown in self-blame, regrets, or shame.
The sixth story gate is a critical gate of the return. We tend to believe the judges and judgments against us and might never progress past this point, just like you said.
Here's a pitfall of the modern return we want to tell you about. Many fall prey to the distraction of planning a do-over birth to get it right next time, thinking that this will redeem whatever is left incomplete in them. But you might not be able to complete your journey and feel redeemed by having your desired outcome in a future birth. So, as the hero, complete your journey by going through the story gates of this birth and arrive in self-love and wisdom. Your heroic journey is about learning, not about attaining or achieving. In the classic book, The Teachings of Don Juan, a Yaqui Way of Knowledge, Carlos Castaneda writes about how sometimes learning is a fearful task. His teacher, Don Juan, said that older parts of us have to die in order to truly learn. And these parts can feel so much like a part of who we are. It's like dismemberment. It's through the process of falling apart during the ordeal and gradually coming together again on the return that we gain true knowledge and self-love.
Finally, when your story has been deconstructed, composted, digested, and reconstructed, you will cross the ninth story gate. You know it when it happens. Your ego can't choose to be done. You can't rush through the gate in the same way your mind cannot rush gestation. You can't storm the sixth gate or any gate, certainly not your rebirth at the ninth gate. When you come again to the place of no story, no judgments against self or others, you will know it. You will know because you no longer need to tell your whole story for any reason. You do not need to tell it to gain sympathy, commiseration, advice, or approval. And now, from a place of far seeing, you feel wordless, deep compassion for yourself, for everyone. You can hear the story within a story, within a story, and see it in its wholeness.
Well, thanks, Danit, and thanks to all of our listeners. And here's what's in the next video. In the next video, number 4, we will continue our dialogue about the return phase of the heroic journey, receiving the hero's gift, and share a little Innana-inspired ritual of return for you. See you then.
Thank you, Pam.